There was a year of my life when I stopped praying. Not because I was angry, not because I had some dramatic falling out with my faith. I stopped praying because I had run out of words. I had said the same prayer so many times, with so many tears, that it started to feel pointless. I would lie on my bed at night, staring at the ceiling, and I would think, is anyone even hearing this? Is anyone up there? Or am I just talking to an empty room? Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever prayed so hard, for so long, for something so important, and felt like the sky was made of stone? Have you ever cried yourself to sleep, asking God to show up, and woken up the next morning to the exact same pain, the exact same problem, the exact same silence? If you have felt that, I need you to keep watching, because what I am about to tell you is going to change the way you see every single silent moment in your life. Let me take you back to where this all started. 3 years ago, my younger brother got sick. Not a small sickness, the kind of sickness that doctors whisper about in hallways when they think you cannot hear them. I remember sitting in that hospital waiting room with my mother, both of us holding hands so tight that our knuckles turned white, both of us praying the same prayer over and over again. God, please don't take him. God, please. We come from a family that has always believed. My grandmother used to say that God answers every prayer, sometimes with a yes, sometimes with a no, and sometimes with a wait. I grew up believing that. I had seen it happen in small ways throughout my life. But nothing prepares you for praying beside a hospital bed, watching machines breathe for someone you love, and hearing absolutely nothing back. Weeks turned into months. My brother got worse before he got better. And somewhere in those months, something inside me broke. I remember the exact night it happened. It was almost midnight, and I was sitting in the hospital chapel, completely alone. I looked up at the small cross on the wall, and I said something I never thought I would say out loud. I said, I don't think you're listening anymore. And if you are, I don't understand why you're staying silent. That was the night I stopped praying. Not because I stopped believing God existed. I stopped praying because I genuinely believed he had stopped listening to me specifically. That somehow, in the middle of all the suffering in the world, my voice had gotten lost. That my prayers were too small, too repetitive, too desperate to matter anymore. For the next several months, I went through the motions. I still went to church on Sundays because my mother needed me there. I still sang the songs. I still said Amen at the right moments. But inside, I was empty. I was going through religion without any relationship behind it. And honestly, looking back now, I think that emptiness was almost worse than the original pain. Because at least pain meant I was still feeling something connected to hope. This new emptiness meant I had given up on hope altogether. Then came the day that changed everything. It wasn't a miracle healing. It wasn't an angel appearing in the hospital room. It was something much smaller, much quieter, and honestly, much harder to explain. My brother's nurse, a woman named Grace, and I promise you that really was her name, pulled me aside one evening. She had been caring for him for almost 4 months at that point. She said, I need to tell you something, and I hope it doesn't sound strange. She said that every single night after her shift ended, she had been sitting outside his room for 10 extra minutes, off the clock, praying for him by name. She said she didn't know why she felt compelled to do it. She just knew she had to. I stood there in that hallway, and I started crying in a way I hadn't cried in months, because in that moment I realized something I had completely missed. While I had stopped praying, believing no one was listening, God had been answering through someone I never even knew was praying for us. A stranger, a nurse who had no obligation to care that much, and she had been doing it the entire time I thought heaven had gone silent. That's when I went back to the book of Psalms, to the 13th chapter, where David cries out, How long, Lord, Will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? I had read that verse before, but I had never felt it the way I felt it that night. Because David wasn't writing that from a place of unbelief. He was writing it from a place of raw, honest desperation. And he still ended that same psalm by saying, I will trust in your unfailing love. I used to think silence meant absence. I used to think that if God wasn't answering the way I expected, on the timeline I expected, in the form I expected, that meant he wasn't there at all. But I learned something that year that I will never forget. Silence is not the same as absence. Sometimes God is moving so quietly through people and circumstances you would never think to look at, that you mistake his presence for his absence simply because it doesn't look the way you imagined it would. My brother recovered. Slowly, painfully, but he recovered. And today, 3 years later, he is alive, he is healthy, and he has no memory of most of those months because of the medication he was on. But I remember every single day of it. And what I remember most isn't the fear. It's the moment I learned that I had been wrong about what silence means. I want to say something directly to you right now, because I believe someone watching this needed to hear it today. If you have been praying for something and it feels like the sky has gone quiet, if you have started to wonder whether your voice even reaches heaven anymore, I need you to understand that your silence is not proof of God's absence. It might be proof that he is working in ways you cannot see yet, through people you haven't met yet, in timing you cannot understand yet. I'm not telling you this to give you a simple answer wrapped in a bow. I'm not telling you that every painful situation has a neat resolution like mine did. Some prayers are answered with healing, some are answered with peace in the middle of loss. Some we won't understand this side of heaven. But what I learnt in that hospital hallway is this: God's silence is never the same thing as God's absence. He is always near to the broken-hearted, even when, especially when, it doesn't feel like it. So if you are in a season of silence right now, I am not going to tell you to just have more faith and everything will magically feel better. I am going to tell you something more honest than that. Keep showing up, even when you don't feel anything. Keep whispering the prayer, even when it feels like it's hitting a ceiling. Because somewhere, in a way you cannot see, in a hallway you'll never walk down, in the heart of a stranger you may never meet, he might already be answering. Tears are not a sign that your faith has failed. Tears are often the language God uses to remind us that we are still alive enough to hope. And if you are crying right now, watching this, in a moment that feels just as silent as mine did, I want you to know that this silence will not have the last word. It never does.